Hey everybody, Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Leader of the Pack podcast. And today, our guest is Lindsey Hayes of Forever Wild LLC. And we've known Lindsey for quite a few years at Duluth Pack. She's always been somebody who's carried our bags and very, very supportive of us, and has been in the outdoor industry and has really thrived in that industry. So welcome, Lindsey.
Well, thank you, Tom, for having me. And yes, absolutely love Duluth, Minnesota. And when I came to town, I also found your shop down on Canal Park and fell in love with those bags. So I sport them a lot of the year. Actually, almost every day of the year, I'm sporting a bag, and so happy to be here today.
Well, thanks for being here. And before we even jump in, you have some great news. So, sporting bag, I think we're going to have to talk like an oversized diaper bag. Can you please indulge us all, Lindsey?
Yes, thank you. We just welcomed twin boys 2 weeks ago. We have Easton James and Jackson Jordan. And so life has changed to diaper duty and lots of feedings and cuddles. And yeah, we're going to need the oversized, like deluxe Duluth Pack bag for the number of diapers we're going to need in the diaper bag.
Oh, I'll tell you what, life has changed, and it's all for the better, because you're going to snap your fingers and you're going to go, holy cow, these little boys grew up on me. How did all that happen? So congratulations. And as much as anything, thank you. 2 weeks into this, I'm sure you're a little deprived of sleep. Thank you for being here with us and keeping your schedule with us. We do greatly appreciate it. So congratulations. And this is awesome.
Yes, well, thank you.
So let's jump into your background. Tell us a little bit about who is Lindsey Hayes, and then how you got this interest in the outdoors, and then into college, and how you found that love for the outdoors, and what you were going to do in college into a career.
Sure. So I am actually born and raised from Wisconsin. I grew up right down by the Wisconsin Dells, water park capital of the world. I grew up, though, not by the water slides. I grew up out on the farm. So we had a small hobby farm, which is where I learned to hunt. It's also where I learned a strong work ethic because Dad put me to work from a very young age. I'm the oldest, so it was not like, oh, you're a girl, you can't do this. It was, oh, you can do it all. And so my dad taught me that from a young age of, don't say just because you're a girl, she can't do this. Because he taught me to hunt right from 10 years old. I started going out in the woods with him. And that's really where my passion grew, because it was that bond with my family, whether that be my dad, my brother, my uncles, my grandpa. My mom doesn't hunt, but she fries up some really good venison if we do get something. And so, yeah, that's where that passion started. I also played sports. I was a 3-sport athlete growing up. And I went on to college to play soccer at Southwest Minnesota State University. And when my career started to end towards my junior year in college, was when I knew sports was my life and I love it. And I don't know what I'm going to do next without it. And that's when I was like, I like to talk. I like to interview people, and I like to tell stories. So I think I need to be on the sideline or doing play-by-play for sports. And that's the next best thing to playing. And so that's really where I took my broadcast journalism degree and dove in and started to do play-by-play and sideline reporting. My first official job at college was a weather girl. And I realized very quickly I didn't want to talk anymore about storm fronts coming in, and it was more of sports that was my calling. But then that transitioned back to outdoors about 7 years ago. And so I love the industry, and the main thing I love is just storytelling, whether it's sports, outdoors, or anything lifestyle. I just love to tell other people's stories.
I think you really hit on something there when you talk about storytelling, because I don't want it to be cliche, because you hear a lot about it these days, but everyone likes to hear a good story.
Hmm.
Everyone loves your little boys are going to be very lucky because everyone loves to hear a good story as well. And I think that's very important. And knowing you as we do, we definitely can see that and have recognized that in you. So in the beginning, the early stages, even before you were inside the outdoor industry, you covered the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, the NBA. Tell us a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough, my internship actually is where that started. I came to Minneapolis and was hired by Fox Sports North as an intern. And that's where I started to just do all the grunt work. And I think that's the biggest thing I could say to anyone getting into any industry. I think there's a lot of people these days that think like, oh, you just snap your fingers from your degree and then all of a sudden you're on ESPN college game day.
You mean
That's
it
not
doesn't
quite
work that way?
not quite that quickly. For some it does, but those are far and few in between. I did logging of Twins games. So I would watch the game from the day before and I would log who got a hit or what happened in every inning, and that was like what I did, and it was like, oh, here we go again. But then I also initiated to talk to all the on-air talent and said, this is really my aspirations in life, and I would like to shadow you as much as I can. And so that's the season that Brett Favre came to the Minnesota Vikings. Ages me a little bit, but that's okay. Was my season of the show Vikings Weekly. So I was a reporter
Oh,
behind the scenes for Vikings Weekly with the host Ann Carroll, and I got to be out on the field interviewing the players after the games and going down to training camp and getting a feel for all of those things. And so that was my original sports career. Then I went to news and sports for a number of years. And then I went to Detroit, to Fox Sports Detroit, and I actually became what Ann Carroll was here in Minnesota, that host for pre and post games and that sideline reporter. And I was like, I finally got my dream job. This is super cool. And getting to cover the teams and tell their stories. The players are very interesting people because a lot of them, I don't think we know how much hard work they really put in behind the scenes and the grind. And that was something that was very eye-opening to me because I was at their practices in the morning to see, then they go to the training room and spend 2.5 hours there. I mean, you want to talk about full-time job of becoming a new mom and the routine of like it's diaper change, then feed, then do it all over again. And that's a lot of what these athletes are doing on a daily basis as well to be at the caliber that they're at. So
sure. But
yeah,
you
it
were,
would.
to be honest, you were a pretty trained athlete. I mean, if you think about it on what your day-to-day went through following these athletes around, can you give us a semblance of what that would be about when you said, I'm at the training facility, then I'm at the game, and that's kind of the coup de grace, right? That's
Yeah.
the really good stuff there. But there's got to be a lot of things that go into that for a reporter before on camera on that. Can you bring us like a week in the life of Lindsey when she was doing that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always like to preface is because this is the biggest question that I get about it is, does someone tell you what to say and tell you what questions to ask? And I know my hair color is blonde, but believe it or not, no, I actually come up with the questions and I write a lot of my own stuff. Now, there is a difference for if you're hosting a pregame show or if you're sideline reporting. So first of all, if you're hosting a show, and in Detroit, it was an hour-long pregame show and an hour-long postgame show. During the pregame show, things are scripted a lot more. So you'll know, okay, we're going to do a segment on this focus, like the outfield. How are they doing? Are they struggling? Whatever. In the postgame, it's a lot more ad lib. Like, you don't know how this game's going to go. And now we're here and you're going to just ad lib with your analyst, and you have to just be able to think on your feet, reflect. A lot of it is like me scribbling down notes during the game and being like, okay, so-and-so had 2 RBI today, and they've like stopped their hitting slump or something like that. So you have to come up with those things. And then the highlights after the game obviously are ad-libbed a lot because of the fact that the game just got over, and then they quickly edit those together, and you have to be able to know who is who and what they did in the game. So it's a lot of note-taking as the game is going on to keep up to date on everything that happened and the main highlights of the game. But it's super fun, to be able to analyze the game and have someone also there to do that. So my job is to ask good questions, to get someone else, the analyst, to give me good answers. And so kind of like what you do, Tom, right? With this podcast, you ask the good questions to tee us up to hopefully hit a home run.
It is. It's really, but it also takes a person like you that can ad lib, that can take a question and not answer yes or no. And even though you were on the other side, you were asking the questions, you obviously have to learn very quickly that you don't ask closed-end questions, a yes or no. You ask something so you can get somebody to tell the story, because that's what you're trying to do, is get somebody to actually tell that story, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. And another thing that I couldn't say enough about that I think in any interview that you're doing is to, like you have, great notes of questions that you want to ask, but then also throwing in a question if all of a sudden, like, being a good listener, because I think that would be one of the biggest traits I would say in my career that I've learned to become a better listener, because you formulate questions, but then if you listen to that person's answer and all of a sudden they say something, it's sometimes better, instead of going to the next question you had planned, to ask a second question about what they just said, and that's so much better. So that'd be the biggest thing that I've learned from when I first started out. I was like, these are my 3 questions, and then I asked them. Now it's more like, these are my 3 questions, but if they give me something good, I'm going to run with it.
And forget the other questions at that point.
Yeah.
They don't matter. They gave me
right.
They gave me good information here.
Yes.
Awesome.
But then and then on the reporter side, that one's a little bit more elaborate. So you have a call in the morning, normally at 8 or 9 a.m. And the producers will talk about what their hopes are for the day. But a lot of it starts way before that, where I'm researching teams. And when I was in Detroit, I was covering the MLB, the NBA, and the NHL. And so I might have one day of covering basketball, the next day covering hockey, and the next day covering baseball, because April in the D, that's what they would call it in Detroit, is crazy when you've got all 3 sports.
Sure.
So I am not only knowing about the Detroit Tigers, but I am also knowing about the team coming into town. And I have to have 3 stories a day on the opposing team, 3 stories a day on the Tigers, plus I also have to have in-game stories. So a story that you can have in the pregame can be a minute to 2 minutes, because you can talk longer. A story in the game has to be like 20 seconds, maybe a little bit more, but you don't have a lot of time because you're going to be coming back from break, and then the action's going to start again. So it's a very interesting thing. But then you go to practice in the morning. Practice in the morning helps you get interview and sound with a lot of the players, and really get to know the players outside of game day, right before the game, because then they turn on their game face and they're just in that mode. So the morning they're more relaxed. Then you go and you write your stories, or try to plan them out the best you can. After that, you try to find video or sound to go with your story, pictures, get those things edited with an editor. Then you go back to the field or the arena, and then you can ask follow-up questions in the locker room prior to the game, and they give you a window of time to do that. And then all of a sudden you go and run out there and hope your hair and makeup still looks good to do the live broadcast, because it's always rushed. It's really up until game time. You are like sweating, running from here to there to get your stories. But it's an adrenaline rush of its own, and a lot of fun.
That's really cool. So that work ethic you gained growing up on a farm was valuable in your sports career.
Yes, definitely.
No kidding. So,
but it's some of the people, I have to tell you this, because I think this is, and people always ask this one too. Who are some of the people that you've gotten to interview that you've really enjoyed? And for Minnesota, we'll start there. But interviewing, Brett Favre and Adrian Peterson was on the team at that time. Jared Allen was on the team at that time. Ben Lieber, still very adamant, and Chad Greenway in this area of Minnesota. All of these guys, I will say, the ones I just named, they're amazing athletes, and everybody knows them from the Vikings for that. But talk about good people. And I can't say enough about how I got to see them just as a person and not that athlete. And Brett Favre, I do an interview with him, and I ask him, Bernard Berrien was on the team, wide receiver, and he just likes to wear his Chanel and Gucci and everything after the game. So he wanted to tell me about what he was wearing all the time. And then there's Brett Favre, and I asked him, I said, Brett, what are you wearing? What's your post, game wardrobe? He's like, a gray shirt, some Wranglers, and tennis shoes, and that's Brett Favre. And
whatever his wife set out for him, right?
Exactly. No, the only brand Brett knows, I thought, was Wrangler, because he at least got that plug in there. But yeah, it's just, it's great to see them as people. And I think that's kind of fun.
So let me ask you, when you were in Detroit, because I'm a huge hockey fan, and Nick Lidstrom, did you have a chance to interview Nick Lidstrom?
So I didn't interview him for like an actual show, but I got to meet him. And another one who's just phenomenal guy. Also, the coach was Mike Babcock.
Right.
Huge outdoorsman. And that was actually something that's really funny. In speaking of the outdoors, I always really try, instead of going up to someone and just shoving a microphone in their face, I try to find a common ground of something that's relatable. And that was one of the things I heard about Mike Babcock. And he's a little bit of a tough cookie to break. He's just like serious. And so I went up to him, and instead of asking a question about hockey, I just had said, so hunting season's coming up. I think I'm going to get a bigger buck than you this year. What do you think? And instantly walls came down. Pictures came out. He's got hunting stories to share with me, and I shared some back. And boy, let me tell you, anytime I needed an interview after that, I was a little bit higher on the list, I think, for a yes.
All you had to do is bring out the picture of the big buck that you had, and just make sure it's a little smaller than his, or you might say, no,
right,
Lindsey, we're not doing this.
Exactly.
And like you said there, again, you brought up about storytelling and getting that commonality with somebody when you're doing that, which has to be just crazy important, not only in the sports industry, but now let's transition to your outdoor industry, because you were just doing that for us. You made it real easy, because you're talking about Mike Babcock and hunting, because you then transitioned from your stereotypical sports that we watch on weekends on TV and whatnot to the outdoor sport industry. What caused that for you? Obviously, you told us some of your background about hunting and growing up on a farm and all of that, and that you like to do that. But I mean, you had a great career going in the mainstream sports, and you made a decision to transition. Help us through that.
Yeah, it was actually a really difficult, like back and forth. Is this what I want to do? This is kind of a big leap. But it was one of those that I got to my dream job, and I realized that storytelling was still at a minimum, I guess, on the sideline, because you're only getting 20 seconds to tell those stories, or maybe a minute. And I wanted to just do a little bit more long form storytelling to really dive in and be in depth. So that was kind of when I had a friend from Minnesota reach out and say, there's this opportunity I just heard of at the Midwest Emmys. They're looking for a female host for a national show that is outdoor related. And Lindsey, like, this is right in your wheelhouse for the hobbies that you have. And it seems like a natural fit. So I actually came to Minnesota thinking, I'll give it a shot to go and hear more about this opportunity, but I wasn't really sure I was leaving sports. And I truly came to Minnesota and heard about getting to ride ATVs and travel around the country and show off the best destinations to ride, and getting to hunt and fish and not need to take time off to do those things because that's part of the job. And I was like, this sounds pretty good. I think I need to consider this. Actually, I already know. I left Minnesota on the plane ride back to Detroit. I was like, it's a yes, I'm going to Minnesota.
That is really cool. So it was like, well, okay, I walk into this interview and they tailor made it for me.
Exactly. Yes.
So that was with who?
So that was with Ron Share Productions. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And the shows that I worked on there were Destination Polaris, which aired on Fox Sports all across the country. And then also on Wild TV in Canada. And then I also worked on another show called Made for the Outdoors that aired nationally on the Sportsman's Channel. That was more focused on looking at a product, how it's made, and then actually using that product out in the outdoors. And that's where we met. And we actually came to feature Duluth Pack. And one of the things that I loved most about working on Made for the Outdoors was really highlighting companies that are making quality products right here in the USA, and then taking it one step further right here in Minnesota. And I have been blown away at truly how many outdoor companies call Minnesota home, just because of how fabulous our work force is here and how they care about quality. And just, that's been so fun to dive into. And it's been really fun to get to the biggest thing for me about you guys being on that show was your story. And your story has such rich history that these bags aren't just a bag. They're a story of the person who hunts with them or fishes with them or camps with them. And then it's the story of how long you have had this business, like, be successful. You know, it's amazing to have a company like Duluth Pack that's done so well for so long. So it was really fun to tell.
when we first met, I remember that because you were talking about the outdoors, and you and I really hit it off because we're both very outdoors people, and we were doing a lot of storytelling before we even gave you a tour and did all that. And what I found really neat was you got really excited about all those other outdoor companies, whether they were Minnesota or in the Midwest or wherever in North America, that you got to tour, and you're like, they make that right there, and you should see how cool it is. In fact, I very distinctly remember one of our stories because you and I had toured the same factory and shot one of their handguns, a 50 caliber. And you're like, whoa, that thing has a punch to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You had just been there, like, within the last month or something like that. So we had a lot in common right away. And a lot of the stories you were telling us was you're really passionate about what you do in the outdoors and why you're doing it in the outdoors and why you want to tell those stories about whether it was, the destinations with Destination Polaris, or whether it was Made for the Outdoors and all these companies making cool products, and then you getting to go do it. In fact, the last thing I'll say about Duluth Pack with that is that we highly recommended that Lindsey kept her day job because sewing for a living wasn't going to quite cut it, because we had her sew, and you know what, you got to just keep in your lane, don't you?
You definitely do. My grandma's going to be so sad because, you know, she tried to teach me for the longest time, and I just don't have the straight stitch quite like grandma. And Tracy, I'll never forget you know, you talk about your workforce and the people. I so enjoyed meeting everybody that worked at Duluth Pack, and just really, you have such a great group there. And I think that has to be so fun to go to work every day and just have such quality people around you. But I'll never forget Tracy's laugh. Oh man, she could sew well. So I'll leave it to her.
She's very talented, and we hear that laugh often. So that's good. You have to have a good culture where it's okay for people to laugh at work, and we really enjoy that. So now you're in the outdoor industry. You're in it full blown. You're running all over North America, because I know that when we left after you were up at one of these shows, that when you were visiting with us, you were literally heading to the Baja of Mexico to go out to the sand dunes, and you said, "Hey, Tom, this is no fun. This is all work." You did a lot of that, but then in 2020, you started making some transition, and you got named pro staffer for some pretty cool brands.
Yes.
Rapala, Mission Archery, Vortex Optics, Mountain Dew. Tell us what goes into being a pro staffer. What goes on to your, I mean, obviously they don't just send you a whole bunch of stuff and you go, "Hey, thanks."
No, yeah. So what I ended up doing is I partnered, and I'm actually Outdoor Bound TV is another television show here in the Midwest. It airs on ABC affiliates all throughout the Midwest. And so that's another show that I am now working on as a pro staffer. And they were the ones who I had already had some connections to some of these brands, but we've been doing some storytelling and doing some video for that. And so with it, a lot of it is just that, that you are an advocate for that brand to say, "Hey, I'm going to be out doing all of these things. Will you try out our new gear? Will you give us an honest review of that? Or we like the stuff that you're doing or the types of stories you're telling. We would love to have our brand be a part of that with you." And so a lot of it is still doing exactly what I've been doing for a long time. I have really prided myself in my career in being a storyteller and not an influencer. And I do think that there today is a very big blur in this world of social media of where you kind of are. There is nothing wrong with starting a blog. There's nothing wrong with having a podcast and you doing it just on your phone. Start somewhere. That's what I like to tell everyone. Whether you are a pro or you are a beginner, there is a place for you and you have a voice, and people, whether it's one listener or 1 million listeners, like, do it. You know, that's what I would say to that. But I just want to have people know, for my career and for like what I do as a profession, I'm a storyteller. I'm not a pose with a fish, look at this gear, you know, person. So a lot of the pro staff deals that I have been working with are a little bit different because of that fact that some of them I will write blogs for them as well. Some of them I will do voiceover or writing of a script and editing, as well as just go fish with Rapala gear and things. And so it's been super fun. But yeah, there's all sorts of different pro staffer, I guess, rules and regulations and contracts, and you get to kind of call the shots and choose where that lies for you. But I can't say thank you enough to all of my sponsors who have backed me through the years, because they backed me when I was single and traveling the world. They've backed me when I've been 6 months pregnant with a big belly out the front, going fishing in the boat and still saying, "Post that picture. We're about family too." And we love it. So it's been pretty fun to see.
So that's awesome. And so each one has different responsibilities and duties, and it's really just between you and them on what you've negotiated that they want from you and what you feel you can deliver to each one of them. One of
Yes.
the things I heard you loud and clear say is that you use the equipment and you find things that are good or bad with it. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people will be, as a pro staffer, you're not going to say anything bad about it. Well, you might not go out and lambaste a company on a blog or on a podcast, but you would certainly, as a pro staffer, I would assume, have the responsibility and the duty to come back and say, hey, I found this flaw, or I think this is wrong, or I think this could be improved, to help those companies be better.
Yes, 100%. And we do that, and they require that kind of us to really, there are those follow-up calls of, here's the new gear, you get it first, go try it out, take some photos of you in those things, let us know what you think, and then let us know what we should improve on. And a lot of those improvements I have been able to really, it's been fun to see, bibs from one year and then to the next year, and to see those improvements and be like, awesome, like this is, way better. And what better way to do it than somebody who's out there on a routinely basis, using the gear and actually putting it to use and beating it up and things like that. And the other fun thing has been, I've really enjoyed, I don't just rep every product that comes my way. And that's another thing that I think is very important to, there are people that want to send you stuff for free and say, hey, that, here, try this. But I'm very selective about that, because I don't want any of my social media or something to have people feel like, oh man, she's trying to sell us something. That's not my goal. My goal is to be authentic and then also rep the products that I really do use. And those are the only ones that I will say yes to. I don't chase the dollar that way. I chase the dollar telling good stories. And then the branding is kind of like, I'll wear the stuff, but I'm not going to sit here and do a sales pitch every day on my social media. So, yeah, I think there's a big fine line of what's good and what can be overkill a little with that.
So after this last year, are we going to see some bibs for people who are 6 months pregnant? Is that what we can see coming after this last year?
Hey, well, it was really funny this turkey season. I laugh because you never know when you post stuff on social media, what's going to like fly and take off and what things are going to be like, oh, do so. So my pants throughout turkey season, like the first week I went out, I was, I think 18 weeks, and it was, I could still button my pants, my turkey camo. And by like the last week when I actually got my Tom, my pants, I could no longer button because the belly was so low that it was like, no. So I used like a hair tie to like loop it through and then loop it to the button. And so there was like a gap of probably almost 3-4 inches. And I just took a picture of that. And I had like 30 people reach out about like, the hair tie is so hilarious, like great idea, I'll keep that in my back pocket. And I'm like, nobody's talking about my Tom. You're asking me the story of the turkey. They just all wanted to talk about me popping out of my pants. So it's always funny.
A new style of stretchy pants for pregnant women and guys who put on a few pounds like me.
Exactly. I think it could be universal. Both men and women alike could use some elastic pants.
Oh, that's funny. So now you enter the entrepreneur ranks. Tell us all about Forever Wild LLC.
It's always been a dream of mine to have my own business. And that was something that I had thought of back in college. So it's really been a work in progress and from the start, because I truly believe to be a good entrepreneur or CEO or someone of a leadership role, even like yourself, you have to almost experience everybody's job under you and really know what they do and how hard they work and what their goals need to be able to kind of lead the pack at the end. And so that's kind of where I've gotten to in my career now is that I've done a lot of different positions, and now I really wanted to take full ownership and have the say of what projects I'm working on and which projects I want to pass on, and to keep going with that. So it's in its infancy, but basically I am able to do commercials, script writing. I will, under the production kind of company, I will help facilitate all of the people that will get a job done. So a client can come to me, say, this is what I need. I need 4 videos. They need this. I need scripts written. I need voiceover. I need editing, all of those things. And then I hire out contractually all of those different positions to get the job done. And a lot of the times I'm also working very closely on those projects as well. So it's been great, and it's only just beginning. I also have the dream still to have my own show. And so Mama put that on hold. Well, babies were cooking in the oven, but look out 2022. There's a lot of new things that are going to be coming your way to get to witness along with. And we're really excited about that.
So we might have in the future years a couple of little boys on film getting their first turkey or their first white-tailed deer, the first grouse.
Yes, I hope to. I hope to have that. And as long as they want it, it's really funny. Opposites attract. My husband could not hate the camera more, but he takes really good photos, so it works perfect. And Mom likes to do the hosting and be around the camera and things. So maybe the boys will be like Dad. And if they want to just be not on camera and go get their big bucks without that, that's fine. But if they do want to, I will welcome it with open arms, and maybe we'll have a twin show or something. Who knows?
There you go. So let's talk about people who are listening to this. Somebody who might be in college, or somebody in high school, or somebody who's in their career and they're going, I really like what I'm hearing Lindsey say. If somebody's interested in a career in journalism, in reporting, what do you recommend to them? What directions do you recommend they go?
So it's kind of crazy, actually, but I would recommend as early as a little kindergartner can already start to become a seasoned storyteller and broadcaster, because of the fact that these days kids in school have their iPads, they're working on them 24/7. They're actually editing videos and doing things. My husband's a 5th grade teacher, and even his 5th grade class is editing videos and has to do certain projects like that. But that's where it starts. I think if you have a passion for storytelling and going through those videos, then that's where it goes. And so I think that it has, something to do with that, of just having a passion for telling a good story can start at any age. And I really think that the biggest thing that you need to do is just have fun with it, whether it's a blog or a YouTube channel, or then once you start to get to school, getting in as many public speaking classes as you can. I know that was the dreaded class in high school, was speech for many, and I actually loved it. And I was like, I know I'm kind of weird, but if you love it and you can get up in front of people and do that, do it. And so that'd be where I'd start. Communication or broadcast journalism are the types of degrees that work really well in the industry. And then just continue to follow your passion. There's so many different avenues that aren't just mainstream news, but you got to remember, you have to put in the reps. You might have your first job be one that's not what you love. And I was a weekend news reporter, and I had to turn grinding days of telling stories that I didn't necessarily want to be telling, but it got me the reps to know how to be on air and to articulate what I wanted to say And that was what that step was for. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just remembering the dream job doesn't happen day one, but keep working towards that dream job.
Awesome. And so I think you may have answered this next question, that is how to stand out versus the competition. And I think you may have just answered that with what you said, that about that hard work, and that your dream job might not be the first one, but you got to go through that, and you need to learn these things.
Yeah. I think also just being authentic, that that was something else that I have really had in my career that I don't know if a lot of others have, is that I've dabbled in a little bit of each industry. I did news, I did sports, I did outdoors, I've done lifestyle, I've done like kind of entertainment type of videos and things. And I realized which ones were an okay fit, but they weren't the best fit. And this outdoor industry, sports, where I am right now, I just feel like I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm not trying to be the best hunter. I'm not trying to be the best angler out there. I'm trying to tell the best story and highlight other people's passion that is also the same passion I have. And so that'd be what I'd say, is just stay true to yourself and don't try to be a on-air talent voice, or like, be yourself, and hopefully people respect that and like that.
That is really good advice to anybody, is just be yourself. That is so important. And I think a lot of people want to be liked by so many people and be everything to everyone. And you can't. Be yourself. And I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's wonderful advice. So you have in your career a lot of contacts, and you network with a lot of people. Walk us through some of that, because you don't have that day one.
Right. And I would say that would probably be the thing that would relate the majority of my success to, has never been about just working hard. It's also always networking and always talking to people, not only about like, hi, what do you do, but also about what your dreams are. Because I'll never forget, as an intern back at Fox Sports North, I told a producer that I really had a dream someday to be a sideline reporter. And it just so happens, when I was in La Crosse, Wisconsin, working in news, doing the morning show as a morning anchor, that producer called me out of the blue saying, hey, it hasn't been posted yet, but there's going to be a job opening in Detroit for a sideline reporter at Fox Sports Detroit. Just wanted to give you a heads up. That heads up turned into me getting that job, because before it was posted, I already had contacted them. I had already given them my resume, and I already had flown out to actually meet them in person. And so I think that networking trail is where that stemmed from. And so I think it's just so important to consistently do that. And trade shows are a great place. And when I started back in the outdoor industry, that was a place where I really went to get to know everybody. And then to go from there and really look online and find out those stories of who's running what, and knowing your stuff, so that those companies when you go to meet them, and continue to follow up. Because the outdoor industry is a very large industry. It continues to grow, but it is also a very, very small network also. And people are very well interconnected. So I think it's important. And that's been another great thing of networking, where one brand has repped me for a couple of years and they've told someone else about me. And then I get a random call on a Tuesday and I'm like, I had no idea that you were going to call, and great. Thank you. So, that's the thing. If I could say anything, network and get to know people. First as people though. And then secondly, if you want to talk business, interject the business part, but have that be a different call. Don't have that be the same first initial hi.
I think that is some really, really good advice. So, Lindsey, from a social media standpoint, things have really changed over careers, and how do you make sure that you're always presenting yourself professionally when it comes to social media and other networking platforms?
Yeah, I do think that it is very important to talk social media because a lot has changed and continues to change. And you do have to understand that when you choose a career wherever you go, that you are constantly then also expected to act a certain way, not only in public when people see you, but also on your social media channels. And so that's been something that I have really focused on throughout my career, that I try to keep my professional life and my work a focus of my professional pages, and then also certain aspects of my personal life I am willing to share, but then there are other parts of my life that I choose to just keep private and just for me. And I think that it's a very happy medium and a balance that you come up with of what works best. But for me, I just want people to know that the same person that they see on social media is the same person that they get in person. And so you're going to get the same respect level of that I demand in person is the same kind of respect level that I want on my social media. And if grandma can't see a post on social media, then it shouldn't be there because grandma is looking at everything. And so that's kind of my basis of make grandma proud and then you'll be okay.
That's really good advice to people. Make grandma proud. She's always watching over your shoulder. That's awesome. So tell us how people find you.
Sure. Yeah. So I have my own website. It is lindseyhayestv.com. And on there, you can see a lot of the content that I have created and productions that I've been a part of. But then also for social media, I'm on Facebook as Lindsey Hayes, and I am on Instagram as at Lindsey Hayes TV, and also on Twitter. That's my handle. And yeah, I would love to, number one, if you have a great story, hear about it, because you never know when I'm in need of another great story to tell. So please send them my way. Number two, just stop in and say hi or tell me your big buck story. I can't tell you how fun it's been for me in my career to be at the grocery store or at a trade show or somewhere random and have someone come and say, hey, I got to tell you this fishing story or this hunting story. I would love to hear them.
Awesome. So people follow Lindsey. Lindsey's an awesome person. What I will tell people is you are the same person that I met the first time I met you. And I would say that's a really good thing, that people just, you're true to yourself, you are who you are, and you're just authentic. And so I give you huge kudos for that, because, you know, you mentioned that just be true to yourself and be who you are and tell a good story. So we're going to go through a couple of quick questions here that have nothing to do with your career. This is
All right.
people to know a little bit about you. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie is Pretty Woman. Oh, I love any movie with Julia Roberts in it. She is another authentic one, I think.
There you go. Biggest fear?
Biggest fear is, I would have to say, oh, that one's a tough one. I think it's not accomplishing everything I want to, because I feel like I get to a goal and then like I'm already on to the next goal, and I'm always fearful that I'm not going to accomplish enough, I guess.
Oh, come on. It's supposed to be like I don't want to get attacked by a bear when I'm walking out to my deer stand or something. You're going to be out in your deer stand with your phone burning up batteries because you haven't accomplished enough.
Okay, biggest fear, you should see. I will actually send you a picture after this. And if anyone else wants to see these sheds, they can go onto my Instagram. But my brother found a matching pair of sheds this year of this buck that we have had on trail camera for a number of years, and he is called the Ghost. So another fear of mine is if the Ghost physically walks within range in front of my stand and I miss. Like, I need to get this deer if it comes by me, because it will be Boone and Crockett, like on the front of a lot of people's magazines if I can get it. And so anyway, that would be another fear.
There you go. I'm okay with that one. You're going to miss them, though, if you're staring at your phone doing all that work.
I know.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice would probably be from my dad, and it would be never say I can't.
You know what? My dad said the same thing. Can't is the worst four-letter word you can ever say around me, he used to say. Great advice from your dad. And the last one, what has been your favorite hunting trip ever?
Oh, that one's a tough one, but I would have to say, well, first of all, my favorite hunting experiences are always on the farm. So I've lived only one place my entire life. It's only one place I've ever called home, and that is the farm down by the Wisconsin Dells. I've had my same stand since I was 12 years old, and it's literally Lindsey's Ridge, part of the woods, that is mine. And so to have that for 30 plus years, well, not quite the same. I haven't been hunting for 30 years just yet, but at the same time, my whole life having that stand there has been very special. But I did have an amazing experience going up to Saskatchewan, and I got whitetail the first day of the week, and on the fourth day of the week, I also got my first ever mule deer. And the experience up there of literally they just set you out in the woods, and it's like negative 20 degrees at dark, and you sit there until dark all alone by yourself. You bring your own food, and what happens to you out there is what happens. And it was quite an experience to have both of those successful hunts in the same week. And it was just an experience I'll never forget, and I'm so thankful for. So that was pretty special.
So everybody, this is the leader of the pack, and today our guest has been Lindsey Hayes from Forever Wild LLC, brand new mom of twins. We appreciate you taking the time. Did not know you were doing this interview from the hospital, which we found out while we were in the middle of the podcast. But folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.